Good morning. Just good morning, 20 to 12. I'm waiting to cook my lunch, and I can't cook my lunch because we're waiting for the van from the Hope Shop to come and pick up our big freezer that we no longer need. It's been sitting empty for several weeks before we went to the UK, so a couple of months. So it'd be quite nice to get that out of the way. I went to our local Intermarché for a bit of shopping because we're going to Joe's for lunch tomorrow, and we agreed that I'd take food over. I don't know why I agreed to that, but I did. So I thought it's like another weekend of thinking about, I'm going to cook this, I'm going to make that. And then I thought, this is really stupid. I can go buy stuff from the shop and give myself a break. So that's what I've done. So I've bought stuff, and I'll cook a bit. I'm picking pork up, and we buy organic pork from a farm about a couple of times a year. And I'll be picking that up later, and we'll probably cook some sausages, and we can have those cold tomorrow, and maybe something else. But that's it. I'm not cooking anyway. In Intermarché and in all of the shops today that have in their town a Banque Alimentaire, which is a food bank, they're collecting in the supermarkets. And when you walk in, there's a lady or a person that will give you a leaflet that tells you what food that they would like you to contribute, if you can. You know, you don't have to. Some people don't. So it reminded me of we volunteered several years ago now in Resto du Coeur in a town. How far away? 20, 25 minutes away. And I did that for a couple of years. Mark did it for about 18 months. And I enjoyed it at the time. It was quite hard work because, this is how many years ago? 5 years ago, 6 years ago. My French wasn't what it is now. But I certainly learnt to say petit pois, carotte. And learn all the other stuff. I've talked about this, I know, in another vlog, because I couldn't remember what the patois was for pasta, and I did remember it some weeks back. And nouilles, I think it is. So there's lots of words, lots I learned, got to know the people that come in, which really, it's really nice to get to know the people. And it's really sad, there was a guy that used to come in, and he was looking quite well when he first came, and quite a handsome chap, and I know that he'd got a family, quite a few children, and several months later I saw him, and my French wasn't good enough to even go over and just say to him, how are you, but I could see that he was just so, I don't know, desperate, so down, understandably, life had just got to him, and it had probably got worse and worse over the months. And yet there was another guy that came in, that when he first came in, he was so depressed he wouldn't talk to anybody, and he couldn't cook anything. So anything we gave him had to be something that he could eat from the can, put it into a dish. We even talked to him about, you can put pasta in your kettle. No. So he couldn't cook anything. And that continued, I think. But, over the months he changed. His depression lifted. And towards the end, when Mark and I were leaving, we discovered quite a lot about him and how he met his wife. And he spoke really good English. So it was a really lovely time, and only stopped, I think, because of my polymyalgia rheumatica, which at the time I didn't know was I'd got, but it was really, I was getting really tired, and my arms and my joints were aching, everything was hurting, and so I stopped. So it reminded me of that today. So I bought some food and put food in her trolley, and talked to her about, because I bought some biscuits. They're called gaufrettes, which are, that's not the right pronunciation, but they're their wafers. You know, the thin wafer, crispy wafers that are sandwiched with. I bought some of those because I know that when I worked there, that everybody loved those. You know, that's what they went for. If I was working on that that counter, that, you know, that section, the dessert section, or the sucre section. Something that you may not know, that I didn't know, was that since 1987, there's been a European fund for aid for the most deprived, and it's funded by the EU, 85% of it by the EU and 15% by the state in France, and it provides the vulnerable groups, the food banks, who provide for the vulnerable groups, enables the French government to purchase food products for the main food associations. They spent 500 million euros between 2014 and 2020 for dry and frozen food. Now, I know that we had boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of pasta, of rice and couscous. They were and they'd all got those. People donate pasta and rice and couscous, but we had boxes and boxes and boxes of the European Union rice and pasta. So it's fascinating to think, you know, here was a government willing to feed its most vulnerable. And I was really shocked to discover that in 2014, Cameron refused this aid. So whilst the food banks in Britain are desperate for food, I mean, you can't have it now because you're not in the EU, but for all those years that you were in the EU, 2014 to I don't know how long. No, it was 1987. So you know, I don't know whether you were getting it before that, but for all those years since, you've not been receiving boxes of pasta and rice and couscous, and I can't remember what the frozen goods would have been in the other sections, because when I did I worked a lot in the pasta section and the legume and the vegetable section, and I didn't do much in the others, so I don't know what the frozen food would have been, and I don't know what the sweet food would have been. But there was plenty of food. Sometimes I had to be careful what I dished out, and just before we left, the rules had changed, and the supermarkets were having to donate the food that they was about to go out of date, and all of a sudden there was masses of food, and they had to add sections in the outside underneath the porch, and they'd got stores outside, you know, storerooms and whatever, and they added sections, and people were going home with, you know, joints of meat and lots of much better food than they'd been picking up initially. So it was really lovely to think that the supermarkets were going to kick it out and it was being donated rather than dumped. You know, it's a much better plan. So it made me really angry anyway to discover that, you know, the UK wasn't getting the aid that it was entitled to. And this is so typical, isn't it? Cutting off your nose to spite your face. You were paying to be in the EU, but you were refusing a benefit from the EU. Well, it's so arrogant, so fucking arrogant, and so... What was the other word I thought of earlier that I can't think of now? But it's like, you know, we're too good for charity. We don't need charity and all that stuff. It's just... And, you know, your food banks are really, really desperate for food now. And of course, you know, they're not going to get that European aid because you're no longer in the EU. If you live in the UK. I don't know about food banks in the US. Anyway, that was what I experienced today, and it reminded me of stuff and reminded me of the European aid and whatever. The music in the background is Mark having a party. If ever I reach 1,000 subscribers and I can start monetizing, not that I'm desperate to do that, this will not earn me, this particular video won't earn me money because it's got music on it which is copyrighted. But because I'm not bothered about being monetized, it's like, well, whatever. It's been nice listening to music this morning. He's not had any music on for ages. So yeah, freezer guys, hurry up, I want my lunch. I've had to have a banana, so I started to get a bit shaky, which doesn't happen very often. I'm not diabetic, but my blood sugar gets a bit low sometimes. Anyway, there we go. Have a nice day. See you again. A plus.